Well, good afternoon. We are called Loose Women. I'm Peter Cook. I'm not a woman, but these women are women, and we have four of them, or three, including me. And so one of them is Pat, who happens to be with us. And we have Catherine in front of us. Tell us a bit about yourself, Catherine.
I'm an ex-public servant who has spent the last 4 years, well, last 5 years really, trying to stop Britain leaving the EU, and I'm still doing that. I've been a member of the Labour Party for a long time and stood for Parliament in the 2017 general election on the basis that somebody had to start trying to take control of this whole process and get Britain to see sense. Yeah. Didn't get elected because I live in a safe Tory seat, but that's another matter.
Okay, thank you. And your cat's name is?
Flake.
If we can't answer any of the questions, we'll ask Flake. I think that's fair. And over Cheshire to Rachel. Rachel Ashley, tell us about yourself, please.
Hello, I'm Rachel Ashley. I'm a singer and voiceover and political campaigner, unfortunately. And again, Brexit, what a huge, huge mistake. What a huge, grave error we're making. And so I too have spent the last few years trying to stop it.
So we're here to try and sort of deal with some of the objections that I get on a daily basis, and I know that you do as well. But first, a little preamble. I was going to just sort of begin by talking about the fact we're entering what I call the eye of the storm, or the autumn or winter of discontent. You know, we've got mass redundancy coming after the furlough removal. We've got a tsunami of legal challenges to government, street vigilantes now sort of getting on and sort of helping the government out to sort of get Brexit done. Christmas is cancelled, or is it? I don't know, depends which day it is. We've got floods to come. We've got flu to come. We've got COVID to the follow-up. We've got people hunting immigrants and sadly, immigrants dying in boats yesterday. A deepening recession, a north-south divide. I can't go on with all this, but I mean, the thing is that COVID plus Brexit has produced this terrible toxic mixture. And therefore, I believe, and I'm going to turn to you to help me with this, that there are still Brexit options which we can explore. There are four, in fact. We could just say we don't want Brexit under this, after 4 years of getting nowhere, really. Clearly the best option, 60% of people, 62% of people now don't want to leave the EU. So the toxic combination of Corona and Brexit as a Britastrophe has accelerated that. But nonetheless, there is still no business case or social case for Brexit. Or we could suspend Brexit, given that we have probably a U-shaped recession and other socio-cultural effects. It could be argued that a suspension of Brexit is probably the best thing to do. But then there's the things that most people think about. There is a deal or no deal. And I'm going to say in a moment that I think that perhaps a Brexit deal is possibly the worst of all outcomes, but no deal is possibly the quickest way to end Brexit. But first of all, before we do that, I'd like to turn first to Rachel. Why am I still banging on about stopping or suspending Brexit? Am I deluded, Rachel, or is this possible?
Now, I understand that legally Brexit happened on the 31st of January. That is a fact. But we're still in the transition period. And political will can move mountains. If the political will is there for something to happen, it will happen. We are in extraordinary circumstances with COVID, unprecedented. And I don't think it's a U-shaped recession we're looking at. I think it's an L-shaped recession that we're looking at. And I think that given the circumstances with COVID, the pandemic, I think that it's entirely feasible that Brexit can be suspended or just kind of forgotten about. Obviously, that will require legal stuff in Brussels and negotiation and all of the rest of it. And it will, at some point, presumably, require a democratic mandate in the form of maybe another referendum or a general election that returns a party that is not necessarily in favour of Brexit. But I think that with political will, all things are possible, especially in the current situation.
Yes, I've mentioned a few times that the law follows politics around, usually to collect cash, of course, but the lawmakers, the legal people would love nothing more than to rewrite a load of documents. It would make them an absolute fortune. Turning then to Kathy, say something from your perspective about why we're not completely barking mad.
Well, I think Rachel is right. I think she's covered most of the points. Suspending Brexit or just forgetting about it is a matter of political will. It's not a matter of legal necessity. Political will, as you say, Peter, can make legal situations change. The MPs write the laws, they can change the laws. The transition period, which the Boris Johnson has to be finished by the middle of October, well, it isn't. We're still in it. It can be extended. The fact that we had to go for no deal by the end of the year, that's British. No, we had to go for no deal by the end or stop negotiating by the middle of October is British law. That finished. That law was wiped from the books at the date, which I think was the 15th of October, when it should have happened, because it has no validity after the 15th of October. So that law has now fallen, and a new law could be put in place that said, actually, we're going to go back to the EU. We're going to say, look, we've all been wasting our time with this. We've got nowhere virtually. It's going to damage your countries and ours significantly now, more significantly than it would have done if we hadn't had the pandemic. It's still very, very active across the whole of Europe. And we could just agree that we're going to give ourselves 3 years and then have another look at it. By which time, in my view, we would be coming up to a general election and could get the political mandate to just forget about it altogether.
Mm. And just coming back, since you've mentioned the law, we Remainers are largely a very law-abiding lot, aren't we? Mm. We sometimes get punched and get death threats, but we don't go marauding on the streets and attacking people. And that's actually a real weakness in this situation, because I hear daily people telling me Brexit is done, a piece of paper was signed.
Oh, yes.
It's our Chamberlain moment, not Chamber Pot moment. But I tell them also that look at the number of times that the government has changed the law in the last 4 years. But it doesn't, there was no deal.
Look at the number of governments we've had in the last 4 years.
Indeed. But
and look at the U-turns that have been done since the start of the pandemic.
Yes. Yeah.
We are on about our 25th U-turn from this government since they were elected last December, and we're still only in October.
And the biggie here is that we've just broken international law in order to get Brexit done. If we can do that, we can change the will of the people, which no longer exists because currently 62% of people don't want to leave the EU. Okay, moving on. The next vexed question is, a lot of Remainers tell me we have to have a deal because we don't deserve anything else because we lost 3 elections and, we're not worth it. We just aren't, we have learned helplessness. And I talk about the difference between no deal and a deal as the simple analogy of no deal is a sudden death and a deal is a slow death. In other words, it's what they call the boiled frog. The notion being that if you threw a frog into a pan of boiling water, it would jump out. But if you put it in a pan of cold water and warm it up, it will actually just sit there adjusting to the temperature due to homeostasis, and then it will die. We are sitting as a boiled frog here at the moment, and I am actually saying that death means death, which sounds like the sort of thing that Boris would say. Let's chew this around. Is a deal really desirable, or is it the case that all Brexit deals are a dog's dinner? Catherine, do you want to start us on that?
Right. I think the answer to that really depends on what sort of deal it actually is.
Yes.
If the deal was that we'd signed up with EFTA, if they would have had us, and I do recall very early on in this process, the Norwegians saying that they would block entrance to EFTA for Great Britain because Great Britain had messed up its own life and it wasn't going to mess up theirs for them as well. So I do remember that wasn't going to be as straightforward as people think it is. If we'd become part of EFTA, if we'd actually stayed as part of the single market and the customs union, then economically, I don't think there would have been any difference between being in the EU and not being in the EU, but being part of that sort of satellite organisation. The big difference there is that for some people who voted to leave the EU, the big issue was sovereignty. And frankly, joining EFTA really is giving up sovereignty in terms of trade with the European Union. because EFTA countries have to just accept the rules that are set in Brussels with no say about them whatsoever. So whether that would ever have been acceptable really baffles me when I hear some of the opposition political parties saying that that's what they'd go for, because that's not what a lot of people thought they were voting for in the referendum. Anything less than that begins to have a very significant downturn on the British economy, regardless of what the deal actually is. And any deal after that will not cover services. Now, the British economy is made up of something like, and the figures are not accurate, I'd have to check them and I haven't, but they are something in the region of 65% of our trade is in services and the balance is in goods and manufactured industry or connected organisations. So you know, things like British Aerospace and so on, and the steel industries and so on. But most of our economy based on commercial services and professional services, largely centred in the City of London. And we have already lost something like £10 billion worth of business from the City of London, as organisations based there have relocated to Frankfurt and Paris to maintain their links with the European Union. So and no trade deal that is being done at the moment will cover services. It will only cover goods. On top of that, you have the additional problem of you've still got a problem with the Irish border.
Yeah.
And that has been missed from most of the arguments about this. So a deal is still going to take a massive hit on the economy. And I did see some figures that said no deal would hit the economy by 10%, but actually a deal of the sort, the only sort we can get if we're not in the single market, would still hit the economy by 6 to 7%.
Yeah, and just picking up that thread, I read some figures the other day. It is a large amount of services. I read 81%.
Oh, right, yeah. I wasn't clear about the figures and I did underestimate.
From the LSE, of course, the 65% might come from the fact that some products are wrapped up in services, so it's complicated. But the other interesting fact, before I turn to Rachel, is we reckon to have something like 11 to 12% GDP loss from Corona.
Yeah.
Estimates vary from 6 to 10% from various Brexits. And, you know, you might just try and add those two together and think, well, 11 plus 10 is 21. But economics doesn't generally work like that. It isn't a multiplier, but nonetheless, you don't just add them together. And it only took 3.5% to give us the 2008 crash. So people have no idea how bad this will get on the economic base. I know it's not all about economics. So I want to turn to Rachel on, shall we say, other matters of, you know, getting our country back and no deal versus a deal. Same question, really. Just riff on what you want to say. Right.
See, I don't know what that means, and I've never known what that means. Get our country back from what? You know, I think that, you know, it's interesting, isn't it, in terms of culture, that Marcus Rashford has reminded me what a wonderful society we actually still have. It's just that we've allowed the people who are loudest, shouting the loudest, to have driven the agenda for the last 4 or 5 years, possibly longer. And it's actually really heartwarming to realise that all of that loveliness and generosity and community, it's still there. And so that's that. In terms of get our country back, it never went away. It's still there. It might have been stamped on a little bit. In terms of a deal, no deal, the damage has been done. You know, now what we're looking at now is damage limitation. And I think that no deal or the best deal that we can get. We had the best deal. We've thrown it away. The damage is colossal. And I don't think people really understand just how much damage has already been done. So to me, I think it's largely academic. Deal, no deal. That's more about a time frame, I think. The damage is just colossal.
I think the difference is the immediacy of the impact. If we have some sort of, and the PR that will follow. If we get a deal of any description, we will have various members of this incompetent, is the politest way I can describe the present government, And they will be telling us that we have got a wonderful deal and that we're all better off than we ever have been because we've left the EU and we've got a deal. I really don't think that the depression and anxiety that is already abounding in this country will be able to take 12 months, 2 years of Boris Johnson telling us what a marvellous deal he's got when people know that they are getting half the amount of goods for the money they've got in their purses, that they are still having to take all sorts of precautions because this virus is not going away anytime soon, even if there is a vaccine, and that they personally are feeling really threatened and may very well have lost their jobs. I mean, we already know that over 1 million people have lost their jobs because of coronavirus. Can we just, and that's damaged the economy by roughly the same amount that a deal or no deal would damage the economy by. And we also know that that hasn't actually hit properly yet because the furlough scheme doesn't end for another 3 or 4 days. So in the next 2 months, just coming up to Christmas, which people are making a big fuss about and perhaps shouldn't be making so much fuss about a date, which could happen next August if we wanted it to, as a national festival or whatever. And people could just lose their jobs in the run-up to something that they think is really important like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we're going to have possibly 2-3 million people unemployed because of businesses that have gone out of business because of coronavirus. Multiply that up by the businesses that have relocated to Europe already, the businesses that will relocate to Europe when the transition period ends, if we haven't got a deal that gives them the advantageous position they've got now, or we've got no deal. And we're talking something in the region of possibly more people unemployed than I can remember in my lifetime. And I do remember Thatcher's unemployment hitting 3-4 million.
Yeah.
So,
and the rest, yeah.
You know, so I mean, that's the worst I can remember because I'm not old enough to remember the 1920s. But, you know, the 1980s were not good in terms of employment. Anybody who lived through that, who was coming up to the age when they wanted a job, will know it was really difficult to get a job. Well, that's the situation we're already in because of coronavirus. Multiply that, say, by 3 to take account of Brexit as well, and we're in serious trouble. So
and
I think
and the people who do have jobs, so let's take, for example, the soy sauce thing.
I was going to save the soy sauce to the end, but bring it up.
Oh, okay.
Not literally.
Bring up the soy sauce, the soya sauce, whatever that is. You know, I mean, adding 6% tariff on one item like that.
Yeah.
Multiply that across the board, across your shopping trolley.
Yeah.
That's a huge amount of money that people are going to have to find. And it might be okay for people who already have a lot of savings or, you know, highly paid job. But the people who are on 0 hours or not, as the case may be, those kinds of differences are going to be colossal.
Yeah.
Well,
you know,
even people on minimum wage, Rachel. Minimum wage does not give you a living wage. It's a £1 a week too low for a living wage, even on northern cost as opposed to southeast.
So, in fact, I should have pointed out we have the north-south divide represented here via 3 people, and we do need a piece of political fudge, and we'll ask Fudge at the end if he's got any ideas for Boris.
Flake.
Flake, not fudge. Wrong chocolate bar.
Let me move on to the next piece. This particular piece is really directed towards Brexiteers as much as anyone else, because you know, we do reach out to Brexiteers in street events. We don't just sit in the bubble, and that's one of the problems that Remain has had, is just talking to each other. Although we're talking to each other, we also go out and do street events, and we have to then talk to real people on the other side. And one of the things I often hear from them is, well, the EU are being a bit unreasonable, aren't they? And I use the analogy of a golf club here. Just imagine the EU is a golf club with 28 members. One member doesn't want to pay the subs, still wants to use the golf club for gala dinners, special events, and wants a free set of golf clubs every year without paying. The head of the golf club, in other words, the EU, must say no. If they say yes, she has a backlash from the other 27 golf club owners who say, I don't want to pay. I want more. I don't want to pay. I want to pay less. They've got more than I have. So she can't do it. So I don't know how people don't understand. And the primary job of any enterprise, be it a business, be it an enterprise like the EU, is to protect its members. The primary goal of the government is to protect its people, which we're having a bit of a problems with. So regardless of this belligerence, the EU must set us aside and protect the greater good of the enterprise is one of the things. This leads me to a question. Is rejoining, therefore, in 4 years or 10 years' time, people hang a lot of hope on, well, we can rejoin. What are your views on rejoining in the longer term?
If we get no deal, rejoin will undoubtedly be on the agenda, because the publicity around leaving with no deal will highlight the problems that actually flow from no deal. And I'm pretty sure that even this government would find it hard to spin no deal as a good outcome, given everything that all of them in the cabinet actually said in the last 5 years, everybody does know about. I think the other dynamic that we have to play in here is what happens in America next week.
Oh, yes.
No deal and Biden in the White House, which is still a very distinct possibility, is really bad news for Britain. Really bad news for Britain. Because Biden has already said anything that damages the relationship between the North and South of Ireland, he will not support.
And that actually, that is,
so far won't be supported by America if Biden's in the White House. And I mean, whatever the popular polls are saying, if you look into the serious statistics on this, Biden is actually in a much, much better position than Clinton was 4 years
So, Rachel.
ago, much better in state. So
it's not just America, is it? I mean, the fact that the government voted to break international law has inevitably had an effect on our relationships with every single country in the world.
Yeah.
We are not seen as trustworthy. We're seen as a bit of a mistake. And that's going to take a heck of a lot of rebuilding. That's going to take some really hard work to rebuild trust and rebuild our relationships with other democracies around the world, not just the European Union, not just America, but all countries around the world. Yeah. And that's part of the devastation. It's not just finance, or unemployment, or it's the whole of our definition has been trashed. The whole of our identity, everything about who we're supposed to be, has been trashed by this. Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, the other thing I would add into that before we come to the sort of final piece, that in 4 years' time, who is to say that we meet the criteria for democracy to re-enter? Who is to say that we are an entity in the first place, as Scotland started to leave or left? Is Ireland on the way to going? Are we reduced, as I have often joked, at number 10, that England becomes the People's Republic of Thurrock? Do we have a unit? And has the EU in 4 years' time got to thinking, thank God they went?
Almost certainly, I would say, Peter. We've been a thorn in the flesh of the EU ever since we joined in the 1970s, despite the fact that the EU was, if you divide it into the 4 people who actually created the EU in the first place, and when it was the old, I think it was originally called something like the Alliance of Coal Exporting Countries or something like that.
Coal and steel, wasn't it?
Yeah. If you actually look at who was the architect of that, then Winston Churchill was actually a major architect of that. The EU, and the EU was the brainchild of Margaret Thatcher. So as it currently stands, the EU is a British created entity. It is utter nonsense that we are walking away from it. Just to come back to what you said about rejoining, you're right, we may not meet the economic criteria. I also think that the political will not be there if we have a deal. If we've got a deal, all the politicians on all sides of the House of Commons and in the Lords will say, okay, that's Europe off the agenda for the next 40 years. because a deal can be varied, a deal can be renegotiated, a deal can be added to, can be subtracted from, can be, you know, improved and reduced and all sorts of things. And it can be done behind closed doors. Nobody needs to know it's going on.
Yeah.
So as far as the public are concerned, if we've got a deal, the government's first task will be to stop talking about Europe altogether.
Mm.
That's what it'll do. And we know how effective their publicity machine is.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, like all these conversations between people who are clued up, we're not actually arguing much yet. I'm disappointed. I want to put a shout out to Brexiteers. Does anyone want to come and argue with us? We'll have a go at that, perhaps. I've failed miserably at getting anyone that wants to come and argue with me online, but I'm still living hope. So,
well, I'm still living in hope that somebody can actually tell me what sovereignty meant to them.
Yes. Yeah, I think that the end of the UK could well be upon us. I think that I think that a reunified Ireland is an entirely possible scenario, closely followed by an independent Scotland. I know that the nationalist movement in Wales is growing. And I know that Scotland have been nurturing their relationship with Brussels throughout this. And I think that, you know, it may, and I do actually think that there will become pressure from the northern cities to distance themselves from Westminster. And it may be that Westminster finds itself lonely, out on a limb, because they do not represent the people that they purport to. They just don't, you know, and I think that split is becoming increasingly evident.
Okay. Well, I think the north-south divide certainly is, and I think, you know, the way people have actually jumped on how good Andy Burnham has been in sticking up for Manchester, as opposed to doing what the government hoped they'd do, which would vilify him for not agreeing to what the government was telling him. And that's gone completely the wrong way for the government. Yeah. And I do think it highlights the whole north-south divide and the fact that Westminster does not speak for the north, and most of the people who are MPs representing southern constituencies have no idea what life in the northern towns is like.
No.
I have a friend who moved to Scotland from Dartford, and he used to wonder what was going on. He said, you only have to live in Scotland for a while to realise that on the 6 o'clock news, Scotland is never mentioned. I said, well, you don't have to live 500 miles away. You can live 50 miles away from Westminster and still feel like that. So the Westminster bubble is the strange issue, and the rest of the country and parts of the UK are ruthlessly ignored.
Absolutely.
I need to move us to the final question. Now, we are predominantly broadcasting to Remainers who've lost the will to live, and I understand that. Yes. I've died about 10 times in the last 4 years, I think, historically. But what can we do about it? Because people say, well, what can we do about it? Well, we go out, and I know you go out, but there's lots we can do about it. And I'm going to kick the ball rolling by saying that, you know, writing to the EU and telling them that no one ever did well by responding to bullies, break international law, people who keep changing things after they've got a deal. No one ever got anything done by giving bullies presents. So I think we ought to be upping our game of writing to Barnier, Ursula von der Leyen, Guy Verhofstadt, and so on, and gently saying, look, you know, there's 62% of us here. We're still here. We're sorry about the rest of them, or in fact, just a few people in Westminster. But we're still here, and, you know, please don't betray us. Betrayal is a wrong word.
Abandon might be a better word.
Abandon is a better word, absolutely. So, you know, because we've been betrayed by one side, but please don't abandon us is a brilliant word. So that would be my thought for the day. What's yours, Rachel?
I think that I'm very conscious that there is a growing rage amongst just normal people. They realise that things are going horribly, horribly wrong. They realise they're very angry. They're angry about the NHS. They're angry about the government. They're angry about lockdowns. They're angry about testing. They're angry about the chaos. But I think that it's really important that we, as a grassroots campaign, and we're all still there, you know, everybody's still there. They may be disheartened, but they're still there. I think it's really important that we work very gently to channel that rage and to move people away from conspiracy theories and explain what's actually really happening here. That, you know, that there are people, for example, like Chris Binodi, who are making a hell of a lot of money from this process. That, you know, the way that the Tory party funding machine works, the way that taxpayers' money is being used for heaven knows what. How can you spend? Where has that £12 billion gone? There is no spreadsheet on earth that costs £12 billion. Where has it gone? Where is it? You know, and that's our money. And I think that we can effectively channel that rage by using, you know, simple, that's our money. Where is it?
Yeah, okay. And Kathy, you're particularly strong on things like divide and conquering the Tories and enabling
Absolutely.
a joined up opposition. Say something about those things.
Right. Divide and conquer in the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party is not a unified party to start with. You've got the European Research Group, who want the hardest possible Brexit they can get away with. And I suspect that they have now got a rival in the group that would be of particular interest to Remainers. And that's a group of 50 Conservative MPs who are calling themselves the Northern Research Group. So I understand as of today, these are the MPs.
54 of them, are there?
Right. These are the Northern MPs that won the formerly Labour heartland seats across that swathe of industrial Northern England. And they are calling themselves the Northern Research Group, and they are, in the main, have been backing, for example, Andy Burnham rather than Boris Johnson over the COVID stance in Manchester. And I think that because they've now formed a group, they could be turnable. Now, some of them are arch Brexiteers, and how you actually approach them would actually be very different from the ones that were Remainers and have just fallen into line, like the MP in the area that I live. But they are turnable in terms of this is not going to deliver what your constituents were promised. Now, whatever that was doesn't really matter. The fact that they begin to rebel about COVID means that they are beginning to think about rebelling.
And they're beginning to think about keeping their seats.
Absolutely, because with the best will in the world, we're now a year into this government. Anybody who's looked at politics know that actually a government gets 2 years to do what it needs to do in, and then it's into fighting the next election, actually. So they've got another year, which is likely to be just as bad as this one for those northern seats. If Brexit goes the way it is likely to feel, excuse the language, a poor deal of the type that Johnson is clearly negotiating, or no deal, doesn't really matter which. Now, those northern MPs will want to keep their seats. It's a rather nice gravy train, Westminster, it all needs total reform, but that's a different day's argument. And those northern MPs should be approachable. So if you live in one of those northern seats, as myself and Rachel do, lobby your MP, niggle at them, pick at them on every single point that something is going wrong with this government, write to them. Hold a placard up outside their house. Try and get to talk to them. Try and get to convince them that actually they can do what the ERG did to Theresa May's government. They can bring it down this lot if they don't like what's going on, and only they can. Those 50 Northern MPs, I think, are the crucial group to really, really turn in terms of bringing this government down and therefore getting rid of Brexit. Because at the end of the day, this isn't really about getting rid of the Tory government, it's about getting rid of Brexit.
Yes.
And that's what they need to understand. But they could get a different government out of the current crop of Tory MPs. Okay,
fine. I'm going to add in the very short term when this video goes out that we need to dump Trump.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yes.
I'm personally sending the dump Trump video that I made to most of my wavering friends in the States and asking them to, you know, to try and lock the Trump followers in their homes on the day and try and get the waverers to actually go out and vote, because it is about turnout, isn't it? it isn't over yet by a long shot.
The turnout numbers so far, especially amongst the younger demographic, are hopeful, but I daren't breathe for the next week. It's so
No, they're
important.
certainly looking very good in terms of turnout. And I think that is a backlash against Trump trying to manipulate the vote anyway.
Yeah.
People have voted early because they were afraid they might not be able to vote at all if they left it to the day.
So
Yeah.
if Fudge could speak, is there any political...
Flake!
Flake.
She's disappeared, actually. I think she got a bit fed up with it because she's a 20-year-old cat who's seen it all in her lifetime as far as she's concerned. And she's certainly the European cat.
Okay.
She doesn't believe we should be leaving the European Union.
She's quite right.
So, where can I find you all?
Well, we are the Next Step Edisbury, Edisbury being in Cheshire, and you can find us on Facebook at TNS Edisbury and on Twitter, TNS Edisbury. And yeah, that's who we are.
And I have to say, Flake does not have her own Facebook page.
She should.
Flake, I feel. But
Flake, straight into camera there, Flake. Beautiful.
Flake could be a co-member of Cats Against Brexit Mayhem.
Oh, I think she already is. I think she's already signed up for that.
Thank you, Loose Women and Man. Thank you very much.
And Cat.
Thank you.